The rain was a cold, gray sheet, blurring the world outside the grimy motel window. It was a fitting backdrop. A world washed out, indistinct, just like her. Elara shivered, though the room was stuffy and smelled of damp carpet and old cigarette smoke. The chill was deep in her bones, a permanent resident that had moved in months ago. She pulled the thin, scratchy blanket tighter around her son, Leo. He was a small lump beside her on the sagging mattress, his breathing the only steady, peaceful sound in the universe. 5 years old. He deserved a castle. He deserved warm blankets and a nightlight that chased away monsters. Instead, he had this: a room with a flickering bulb and a mother who was a ghost of herself. Her ankle throbbed with a dull, insistent rhythm, a painful metronome counting down their last hours of anonymity. She had twisted it scrambling over a fence 2 nights ago, the adrenaline so sharp she hadn't felt it until they were miles away. Now, the pain was a cruel reminder of their flight. Her purse was on the peeling laminate nightstand. It held $17 and a crumpled drawing of a superhero Leo had made for her. That was the sum total of their world. Everything else was gone, left behind in a house that had never been a home. A memory, sharp and unwelcome, sliced through her exhaustion. Mark's voice, low and venomous. "You are nothing without me, Elara. Absolutely nothing." She squeezed her eyes shut, pushing it away. He was wrong. She was not nothing. She was a mother. That had to be enough. It had to be. A wave of dizziness washed over her, and the room tilted. Her forehead was slick with a feverish sweat. She hadn't eaten in a day, giving the last of the crackers to Leo. Her body was finally rebelling, shutting down. "Mommy." Leo's voice was small, pulling her back from the gray edge. He was sitting up, his dark curls a mess, his eyes wide and worried. "I'm here, sweetie," she whispered, her voice a dry rasp. She tried to sit up, but the room spun violently. She fell back against the lumpy pillows, a groan escaping her lips. "Are you sick?" he asked, his little hand coming to rest on her hot forehead. "Just tired, baby. Just very, very tired." But it was a lie, and they both knew it. He had seen too much to be fooled by simple reassurances. He had learned to read the shadows in her eyes, the tremble in her hands. He watched her for a long moment, his small face a mask of concentration. He looked at the empty water bottle on the floor. He looked at his mother, pale and shivering. He looked out the window, at the relentless rain. Through the downpour, at the very end of the long, desolate road that serviced the motel, stood a house. It was nothing like the other buildings. It was a structure of glass and dark wood, with warm lights glowing from within. It looked like a fortress. It looked safe. He made a decision. While Elara drifted in a feverish haze, Leo slipped off the bed. He pulled on his slightly too big sneakers, his small fingers fumbling with the laces. He grabbed his hooded jacket, the one with the dinosaur spikes on the back. He gave his mother one last, lingering look. Then he quietly opened the motel room door and slipped out into the storm. The wind hit him immediately, a wet, cold slap that took his breath away. Rain plastered his hair to his scalp, but he didn't falter. He pulled his hood up and started the long walk toward the light. Damien Blackwood stared at the architectural model on his vast mahogany desk, but he didn't see it. He saw his daughter's face at dinner. Quiet, subdued. He saw the empty chair at the head of the table, an absence that was more of a presence than any person. It had been 3 years since Amelia died. 3 years of this echoing silence in a house he had built for laughter. He ran a hand over his tired face. He was the chief executive officer of one of the country's largest tech firms. He managed thousands of employees, billion-dollar deals, the relentless pressure of the market. He could command a boardroom with a single look. But he couldn't coax a smile from his 7-year-old daughter. A soft knock on his study door was followed by the small, hesitant form of Maya. She was in her pajamas, clutching a worn teddy bear. "I can't sleep, Daddy," she murmured, her voice barely audible. He softened instantly, the corporate titan melting away to reveal the father. He opened his arms, and she climbed into his lap, curling into his chest. "What's on your mind, little star?" he asked, his voice a low rumble. "The rain is too loud," she said. It was her standard excuse. The rain, the wind, a shadow on the wall. Anything but the truth. Anything but, "I miss Mommy." He held her close, breathing in the scent of her shampoo. He was failing her. All the wealth in the world, and he couldn't fix the most important thing. He couldn't heal his own child's heart. That was when he heard it. A sound so out of place he thought he was imagining it. A frantic, tapping sound at the massive front door. Not the chime of the doorbell. A small, desperate knocking. Maya sat up. "Who's that?" "I don't know," Damien said, a flicker of unease running through him. It was late. His estate was gated, secure. No one just showed up. He stood, settling Maya back in his large leather chair. "Stay here for a second." He strode out of the study and down the marble-floored hall. The tapping continued, insistent. He checked the security monitor by the door. His breath caught in his throat. Standing on his doorstep, drenched and shivering, was a little boy. He couldn't be more than 5 or 6. He was soaked to the bone, his small face streaked with rain and tears. Damien unlocked the door and swung it open. The boy looked up, his eyes huge and pleading in the warm light from the hall. He wasn't scared of Damien's imposing size. He was beyond fear. He was on a mission. "Please," the boy said, his voice trembling with cold and desperation. "My mom's hurt." Something in Damien's chest cracked open. A primal, protective instinct he hadn't felt in years surged through him. He didn't ask questions. He didn't hesitate. He didn't think about the strangeness of it, the potential danger. He saw a child in need. He saw the ghost of his own daughter's pain in this little boy's eyes. He turned and yelled up the stairs to his housekeeper, who was just emerging from her quarters. "Maria, call Dr. Evans. Tell him it's an emergency. And look after Maya." He didn't wait for a reply. He knelt in front of the boy. "Where is she? Show me." The boy, Leo, just pointed a small, trembling finger down the dark, rain-swept road toward the blinking vacancy sign of the rundown motel. Damien ran without looking back. He scooped the small boy into his arms, shielding him from the worst of the storm with his own body, and sprinted into the night. The expensive leather of his shoes was ruined in the mud and puddles. His tailored suit was soaked through in seconds. He didn't care. Leo directed him to the room at the far end. Number 7. The door was slightly ajar. Damien pushed it open and stepped inside. The scene hit him like a physical blow. The smell of poverty and sickness. The flickering light. And on the bed, a woman, pale as death, tangled in a threadbare blanket, her breathing shallow. He felt for a pulse. It was there, but it was thready, weak. Her skin was burning to the touch. He gently gathered her into his arms. She was impossibly light, as if she were made of nothing but brittle bones and sorrow. She murmured something incoherent, her head lolling against his shoulder. He carried her out of that desolate room, back into the storm, with her son trailing closely behind, his small hand clutching the back of Damien's trousers. He was bringing them home. Elara woke to the scent of lavender and clean linen. For a moment, she was suspended in a blissful, painless fog. Then memory returned, and she bolted upright, a gasp tearing from her throat. "Leo." The room was vast and quiet, painted in soft shades of cream and silver. Sunlight streamed through a floor-to-ceiling window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. This wasn't the motel. This was a palace. Panic seized her. Where was she? Where was her son? The door opened softly, and a man stepped in. He was tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a simple gray sweater and dark trousers. His face was kind, his eyes filled with a gentle concern. It was the man from her fever dream, the man who had carried her. He held up a hand, his movements slow and non-threatening. "It's all right. You're safe. Your son is safe." She clutched the plush duvet to her chest, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Where is he?" "He's downstairs in the kitchen, eating pancakes. He was worried about you. His name is Leo, right?" Elara nodded, the knot of fear in her chest loosening just a fraction. "My name is Damien Blackwood," he said, his voice a calm, deep baritone. "Your son came to my door last night. You were very sick. You have a severe case of influenza and a badly sprained ankle." He gestured to her foot, which was propped on a pillow, neatly wrapped in an elastic bandage. "A doctor came to see you while you were sleeping. He left some medication for the fever. It was too much to process. The kindness, the clean room, the quiet safety. It felt like a trap. Kindness, in her experience, always came with a price." "Why?" she whispered, the word raw and suspicious. Why are you doing this? Damien's expression softened with a sadness that seemed to go bone deep. He understood her fear. He saw the shadows of her past in the defensive way she held herself. Because a little boy knocked on my door and asked for help, he said simply. No other reason is necessary. He left a tray with a glass of water and some pills on the bedside table. Rest. When you feel up to it, there's a bathroom through that door. I've had my housekeeper leave some fresh clothes for you. They belong to my late wife. I hope you don't mind. He paused at the door. Leo is fine. He's a brave kid. Then he was gone, leaving Elara alone in the silent, luxurious room. She felt like an intruder, a stray brought in from the rain. The clothes laid out on a chair were of the finest silk. The room was bigger than the entire apartment she had once shared with Mark. She felt small and dirty and utterly undeserving of this sanctuary. But the thought of Leo eating pancakes downstairs gave her strength. She forced herself to swallow the pills, to drink the water. Slowly, painfully, she made her way to the bathroom, a space of marble and chrome that looked like it belonged in a magazine. She looked in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Her face was gaunt, her eyes hollowed out and haunted. She saw the faint yellowing of a bruise on her cheekbone, a parting gift from Mark. She washed her face, the warm water a shocking comfort. She put on the borrowed clothes, a soft cashmere robe. It felt like a costume from another life. When she finally made her way downstairs, leaning heavily on the polished banister, she followed the sound of a child's laughter. It was a sound she hadn't heard from her own son in a very long time. She found them in a sun-drenched breakfast nook overlooking a vast, manicured garden. Leo was sitting at a large wooden table, a smear of syrup on his cheek, giggling as Damien made a funny face. Sitting opposite them, watching with a solemn, unreadable expression, was a little girl with Damien's serious eyes and long, dark braids. Leo saw her first. "Mommy!" He scrambled off his chair and ran to her, wrapping his arms around her legs. Elara sank to her knees, ignoring the sharp pain in her ankle, and hugged him fiercely. "Oh, my baby. Are you okay?" "I'm okay," he said, his voice muffled against her. "Mr. Damien gave me pancakes. And this is Maya. She has a dog named Atlas." Elara looked up. Damien was watching them, a small, sad smile on his face. The little girl, Maya, just stared. Her gaze was not hostile, but it was intensely guarded. She was a gatekeeper to this fragile peace. "This is my daughter, Maya," Damien said gently. "Maya, this is Elara, Leo's mother." Maya gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. The days that followed were a strange, dreamlike haze for Elara. She existed in a state of tentative quiet. She ate meals she hadn't cooked, slept in a bed she hadn't paid for, wore clothes she didn't own. She was terrified of being a burden, of overstaying a welcome that felt too good to be true. She tried to help, but the housekeeper, Maria, a kind woman with warm eyes, would gently shoo her away. "You rest. You heal." So Elara focused on the only thing that felt real, her son, and she watched. She watched Damien leave for work each morning in a sleek black car, his shoulders squared as if carrying the weight of the world. She watched him return each evening, the weight still there, until he saw Maya, and it would lift, just for a moment. And she watched Maya. The little girl was a quiet satellite, orbiting her father but never quite connecting. She spent hours in the playroom, surrounded by toys she never played with. Mostly, she drew. She would sit for hours with a box of crayons, her brow furrowed in concentration, filling pages with somber, gray-tinged pictures. One afternoon, Elara found her sitting on the floor, staring at a piece of paper in frustration, a single tear rolling down her cheek. Elara hesitated at the door, afraid to intrude. But the sight of a sad child was a magnetic pull she couldn't resist. She limped into the room and sat down on the floor a few feet away. "Is everything okay?" she asked softly. Maya shook her head, not looking up. She pointed a small finger at her drawing. It was meant to be a horse, but the legs were wobbly and disproportionate. "It's wrong," she whispered. "I can't make it look like Mommy's." Elara's heart ached. Before Mark, she had been an artist. She had painted, sketched, filled canvases with light and color. He had told her it was a worthless hobby, a waste of time. He had broken her brushes, thrown away her paints. He had broken that part of her. but the muscle memory was still there. "Can I show you a little trick?" Elara asked gently. Maya looked at her, her eyes wary, but she nodded. Elara took a fresh piece of paper and a pencil. "Sometimes," she said, her voice quiet, "it's easier if you don't think of it as a horse. Think of it as just shapes. See, a big circle for the body, a smaller circle for the head, then some rectangles for the legs." She sketched it out, her hand moving with a long-forgotten confidence. She showed Maya how to connect the shapes, how to curve the lines, how to erase the guides. Within minutes, a simple but recognizable horse stood on the page. Maya's eyes were wide with wonder. Elara handed the pencil back to her. "You try." Maya did. Her first attempt was clumsy, but the second was better. A smile, a real, brilliant smile, finally broke through her solemn facade. She looked at Elara, and for the first time, her guard was down. There was a flicker of connection, a spark of trust. Elara didn't push. She just smiled back and quietly left the room. The next morning, when she woke up, a small, folded piece of paper was sitting on her bedside table. She opened it. It was a drawing, in bright, wobbly crayon. A picture of a yellow flower under a smiling sun. It wasn't a masterpiece. It was something more. It was an offering. It was acceptance. Damien saw the change in his daughter immediately. That night at dinner, Maya didn't just answer his questions with one-word replies. She talked. She told him about the horse she drew. She told him about the shape trick Elara had taught her. "Elara is a good drawer, Daddy," she said, a newfound animation in her voice. Damien looked across the table at Elara, who was watching Maya with a soft, gentle expression. He saw the faint blush on her cheeks at the praise. For the first time since she had arrived, she didn't look like a frightened bird, poised for flight. She looked almost at peace. He felt a warmth spread through his chest, a feeling so foreign he barely recognized it. It was hope. The house was changing. The silence was receding, replaced by the sound of Leo's boisterous games and Maya's tentative laughter. Elara's quiet presence was like the first rays of dawn after a long, dark night. She moved through his home with a gentle grace, leaving little pockets of warmth in her wake. She would rearrange flowers in a vase, hum a soft tune while she helped Leo with a puzzle, or simply sit with Maya while she drew, offering quiet encouragement. She never intruded, never presumed. But she was slowly, unconsciously, turning his house back into a home. He found himself looking for excuses to be near her. He started coming home from the office earlier. He would ask her about her day, about Leo. He learned that she loved to read, that her favorite color was the deep blue of a twilight sky, that she had a wry, subtle sense of humor that only appeared when she felt safe. He also saw the pain she kept locked away. He would sometimes catch a look in her eyes, a distant, haunted look, and he knew she was back in that other life. He saw the way she flinched if he moved too quickly, the way she instinctively wrapped her arms around herself as if to ward off a blow. His heart ached for her, and a cold, hard anger settled in him toward the man who had done this to her. One night, long after the children were asleep, a storm raged outside, mirroring the one that had brought her to him. The power flickered and went out, plunging the house into a sudden, deep darkness. A moment later, a small, terrified cry came from Elara's room. Damien grabbed a flashlight from a kitchen drawer and went to her. He found her sitting up in bed, wrapped in a blanket, trembling uncontrollably. "It's okay," he said softly from the doorway, keeping his distance. "It's just a power outage. The backup generator will kick in any second." "He used to do that," she whispered, her voice shaking so badly he could barely understand her. "When he was angry, he'd cut the power. He liked the dark, liked how I couldn't see him coming." The generator hummed to life, and the lights flickered back on. The confession hung in the air between them, raw and horrifying. Damien's fists clenched at his sides. The urge to protect her, to somehow go back in time and obliterate the man who hurt her, was so strong it was a physical force. He didn't enter her room. He wouldn't cross that boundary. Instead, he pulled a chair from the hallway and sat just outside her open door. "I'll stay right here until morning," he said, his voice a low, steady anchor in the night. "Nothing is going to happen to you. I promise." She didn't answer, but he heard the trembling subside. He sat there for hours, a silent guardian, until the first light of dawn crept through the windows. The unspoken barrier between them had been broken. A few nights later, he found her in the kitchen, staring out the window at the moonlit garden. Neither of them could sleep. It was becoming a familiar pattern. The quiet hours of the night were when the ghosts came out. He poured 2 cups of herbal tea and sat down at the table with her. For a long time, they just sat in a comfortable silence. He told me I was worthless so many times that I started to believe him, she said suddenly, her voice barely above a whisper. He said no one would ever want me, that I was broken, damaged goods. She traced a pattern on the tabletop with her finger. He broke my spirit. I used to paint. I loved it. It was the one thing that was mine. He destroyed all my canvases, poured paint thinner on them, said it was a waste of his money. Damien listened, his heart breaking with every word. He didn't offer empty platitudes. He didn't say, "You should have left sooner." He knew it wasn't that simple. He simply listened, offering her the gift of being heard. When she fell silent, her story told, he found himself speaking, sharing a part of himself he had kept locked away since Amelia's death. "I was in a meeting in Tokyo when she collapsed," he began, his own voice thick with old grief. "It was a stroke. Massive. They called me, told me to come home. By the time my plane landed, she was gone." He stared into his cup, seeing the past. "I was closing a deal. A big one. I thought it was the most important thing in the world. I missed her last days because I was chasing a number on a spreadsheet." The silence in this house, it was deafening, he continued. "Maya stopped talking for almost 6 months. I didn't know how to fix it. I could build a company from nothing, but I couldn't reach my own daughter. I felt like the biggest failure on the planet." Elara looked at him, really looked at him. She saw past the billionaire CEO, past the powerful protector. She saw a man drowning in his own grief, a lonely father trying his best. He was just as wounded as she was. "You're a good father, Damien," she said softly, and the sincerity in her voice was absolute. "She adores you." In the quiet of the late-night kitchen, they were no longer a rescuer and a victim. They were 2 people, bound by shared wounds, finding a fragile, tentative solace in each other's presence. A bond was forming, deeper than gratitude, stronger than pity. It was the beginning of something new. The illusion of safety was shattered on a sunny Tuesday afternoon. Elara was in the garden with the children, pushing Leo on the swing, when Damien's head of security, a stern man named Arthur, approached her. His face was grim. "Miss Elara, Mr. Blackwood needs to see you in his study immediately." A cold dread washed over her. She knew, instinctively, that her past had caught up with them. She found Damien standing by the window, his back to her. He was on the phone, his voice a low, controlled fury. "I don't care what it costs. I want a full security detail on my property, 24/7. And I want a restraining order filed by the end of the day. Yes, Mark Renner. Get it done." He hung up and turned to face her. His expression was a mixture of anger and deep concern. "He found you," she whispered, her voice barely a breath. It wasn't a question. Damien nodded grimly. "He showed up at the main gate an hour ago. Caused a scene. Demanded to see his wife and son. The security team removed him." Elara felt the blood drain from her face. The ground seemed to drop out from under her. He was here. The monster was at the gates of her sanctuary. "That's not all," Damien said, his jaw tight. "He's contacted the tabloids. He's painting a picture of a distraught husband searching for his mentally unstable wife, who was lured away by a wealthy predator." He held up a tablet. The screen showed a sleazy headline: "Billionaire CEO Damien Blackwood's new love? A troubled runaway wife." Below it was a picture of Damien at a recent charity event, and next to it, a picture of her. A picture Mark had taken. A picture where she looked tired and sad. The air left her lungs. She was going to destroy this man. This good, kind man who had only helped her. She had brought her darkness into his world of light. Her old instincts kicked in. The instinct to flee. To disappear. To make herself small and invisible so the damage she caused would be minimal. "I have to go," she said, her voice trembling as she backed away toward the door. "I can't. I won't let him do this to you. To your family." "Elara, stop." Damien's voice was firm, commanding. But she couldn't. The terror was a living thing inside her, clawing at her throat. "You don't understand what he's like," she choked out, tears streaming down her face. "He will ruin you. He will stop at nothing. I have to take Leo and go. It's the only way. She turned to run, but he was there in 2 long strides, his hands gently but firmly gripping her upper arms, stopping her. No, he said, his eyes boring into hers. You are not running anymore. Do you hear me? This is your home now. But the press, your reputation. Maya. My reputation can survive, he said, his voice softening but losing none of its steel. And my daughter is safer with you here than she has been in years. The only thing I will not survive is letting you walk out that door and back into danger. He pulled her into a hug, his arms a protective shield around her. She collapsed against his chest, her sobs racking her body. She had spent so long fighting alone. The feeling of someone else standing with her, fighting for her, was overwhelming. I will handle Mark, he murmured into her hair. I will use every resource, every penny I have, to ensure he never comes near you or Leo again. You just have to do one thing for me. She looked up at him, her eyes blurry with tears. What? Stay, he said simply. Just stay. The following week was a siege. Paparazzi camped outside the gates. The story was everywhere, twisted and ugly. Damien's public relations team worked around the clock. Elara felt like a prisoner, hiding within the beautiful walls of the estate. The guilt was eating her alive. She saw the stress on Damien's face, the hushed, worried conversations he had on the phone. She tried to make herself scarce, hiding in her room. But the children wouldn't let her. Leo seemed to sense her fear and became her little shadow, always needing a hug or a story. And Maya, in her own quiet way, offered support. She would slip her small hand into Elara's, a silent gesture of solidarity that spoke volumes. Mark, meanwhile, was playing the victim to perfection. He gave a tearful television interview, clutching a photo of Elara and Leo, begging for his family to come home. He seemed plausible, concerned, heartbroken. Damien's lawyers were building a case, but it was slow. They needed proof. They needed Elara to speak. The thought terrified her. To face him, even in a courtroom. To speak the ugly truth out loud. One evening, Damien came to her. He looked exhausted. My legal team has a hearing for the permanent restraining order tomorrow, he said. They think it would be best if you weren't there. They can use police reports, medical records. But, he trailed off. But it would be stronger if I testified. She finished for him, her voice hollow. Yes, he admitted. But I will not force you. We can win without it. Your safety, your peace of mind, is all that matters. She looked at him, at this man who was willing to risk his public image, to spend a fortune, to protect her. She looked at the drawings Maya had taped to the wall, at the small toy dinosaur Leo had left on the table. This was her home now. And you fought for your home. The fear was still there, a cold knot in her stomach. But for the first time, it was accompanied by something else. A flicker of strength. A spark of defiance. She had spent years being silent. Years letting him define her. No more. I'll do it, she said, her voice quiet but firm. I'll testify. The courtroom was a blur of polished wood and stern faces. Elara sat beside Damien, her hands clenched so tightly in her lap, her knuckles were white. Across the room, Mark sat with his lawyer. He caught her eye and gave her a small, smug smile. A smile that said, "You are still mine." For a moment, all her resolve crumbled. The fear was suffocating. She wanted to run. Then she felt Damien's hand cover hers. He didn't look at her. He just squeezed her hand gently, a silent message of support. You are not alone. When she took the stand, her voice was a trembling whisper at first. Mark's lawyer was brutal, twisting her words, painting her as an ungrateful, unstable woman who had abandoned a loving husband. She faltered, the old shame and fear rising up to choke her. Then she looked at Damien. He was watching her, his expression unwavering. It was not a look of pity, but of profound belief. He believed in her strength. And in that moment, she started to believe in it too. She took a deep breath. She looked directly at the judge, ignoring the lawyers, ignoring Mark. And she told her story. She spoke of the broken promises, the endless criticism that wore her down to nothing. She spoke of the isolation, of being cut off from her friends and family. She spoke of the nights he would lock her out of the house, of the way he would break her things, of the fear he used as his primary weapon. Her voice grew stronger with every word, clearer with every truth she finally allowed into the light. She was no longer a victim recounting her trauma. She was a survivor, claiming her own narrative. When she was done, a heavy silence filled the courtroom. Mark was defeated. His act crumbled under the weight of her quiet, powerful truth. The judge granted the permanent restraining order without hesitation, his words sharp and damning of Mark's character. It was over. Walking out of the courthouse, past the scrum of reporters, Elara felt lighter than she had in years. The monster was gone. The past no longer had a hold on her. She was finally, truly free. Life settled into a new, beautiful rhythm. The security guards and the reporters disappeared. The fear that had been Elara's constant companion for so long finally faded, replaced by a quiet, steady sense of peace. The house was filled with life. Damien had a studio space built for Elara in a sunlit corner of the house overlooking the garden. At first, she just stared at the empty canvases, the neat rows of paints and brushes. The fear of not being good enough, a ghost of Mark's voice, held her back. Then, Maya came in, holding one of her own drawings. "Can we paint together?" And just like that, the dam broke. They painted for hours, not masterpieces, but joyous, colorful messes. Elara felt a part of her soul, long dormant, reawaken. The colors returned to her life, both on the canvas and off. She and Damien fell into an easy, unspoken partnership. They were a team. They parented the children together, made decisions together, shared quiet evenings after Maya and Leo were in bed, talking for hours. The love that grew between them was not a fiery, passionate explosion. It was a slow, gentle sunrise. It was built on a foundation of shared vulnerability, mutual respect, and a deep, abiding tenderness. It was the safest thing she had ever known. One evening, the four of them were on the floor of the living room, building an elaborate castle out of wooden blocks. Leo was in charge of the towers, and Maya was meticulously arranging the defensive walls. "We need a queen for the castle," Leo declared. Maya nodded seriously. "Elara can be the queen. And Daddy can be the king," Leo added. Elara smiled, her heart full. She looked at Damien, and the love she felt for him, for this life they were building, was so immense it almost hurt. Later that evening, after the children were asleep, Damien found her in the studio. She was standing before a canvas, the first one she had completed. It was a painting of the garden, vibrant and full of light. In the center were two small figures, a boy and a girl, holding hands. "It's beautiful," he said, his voice soft. "I feel like I can breathe again," she said, turning to face him. "You gave me that. You and the children. You saved me, Damien." "No," he said, stepping closer and taking her hands in his. "We saved each other." He looked at her, his dark eyes filled with a love so profound it took her breath away. "I can't imagine this house without you, Elara. I can't imagine my life without you. The silence is gone because you're here." He hesitated, a rare moment of vulnerability for such a decisive man. "The children, they see you as their mother. And I love you. More than I thought I was capable of loving again." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, velvet box. He opened it. Inside was a simple, elegant ring with a single, deep blue sapphire, the color of a twilight sky. "Elara," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Will you make this official? Will you be my wife? Will you let us be your family, forever?" Tears streamed down her face, but for the first time in her life, they were tears of pure, unadulterated joy. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, of course, yes." The wedding was not a grand affair for the society pages. It took place in the garden, the same garden she had painted, under a clear blue sky. The only guests were Maria and Arthur, the two people who had been there from the beginning. Leo was the ring bearer, carrying the pillow with a focused solemnity that was almost comical. Maya was the flower girl, scattering petals with a joyful abandon that would have been unthinkable just a few months before. Elara wore a simple white dress. She didn't feel like a broken thing being made whole. She felt like herself, strong and complete, choosing to join her life with a man she loved. When Damien slid the ring onto her finger, he leaned in and whispered, "Welcome home." A year later, the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the lawn. The sound of laughter echoed through the open doors of the house. Damien was teaching Leo how to ride a bike, his big, strong hands steady on the seat. Leo wobbled, giggled, and pedaled with fierce determination. On a blanket under the shade of a large oak tree, Elara sat with Maya, their heads bent together over a sketchbook. Maya was no longer drawing gray, somber pictures. Her pages were filled with vibrant color, with smiling faces and suns and horses that ran free. Elara looked up from the drawing, a contented smile on her face. She watched her son, her daughter, her husband, her family. The old motel on the edge of town had been torn down months ago, replaced by a small community park. The past was literally gone, paved over and replaced with a place for children to play. Sometimes, she would touch the faint scar hidden by her hairline, a physical reminder of the life she had escaped. It no longer sparked fear. It was just a part of her story, the preface to the beautiful chapter she was living now. Damien caught her eye from across the lawn and smiled. It was a smile that reached his eyes, crinkling the corners, a smile of pure, uncomplicated happiness. The weight he used to carry was gone, replaced by the easy joy of a man who was deeply loved. Hanging in their bedroom, in a simple silver frame, was a child's wobbly drawing of a yellow flower, a reminder of the first small act of trust, the first seed of hope from which this incredible love had grown. Elara had been a woman with nothing, lost in the rain. Now, she had everything, not the wealth or the big house, but the things that truly mattered. Safety, laughter, a hand to hold in the dark. She had found that family is not always the one you are born into, but the one you build. It's built with kindness, cemented with shared tears, and decorated with the unconditional love of children. Her broken pieces had not been discarded. They had been gathered up with gentle hands and used to build something stronger, something more beautiful than she could have ever imagined. She was home,